Hi, this is Dr. John Grazel, the Baha'i Chair for World Peace at the University of Maryland. And this clip focuses on the roles between what are called today the three Ds: defense, diplomacy, and development. And it is a really critical part of what is happening today, particularly as regards the United States' understanding and practices of development. Now, in terms of these three elements, the first thing to be important is that um, they've existed for a long time. But the reason we talk about the three Ds actually is this concept came in very early in the Bush II administration when they put out the new national strategy, and they called for these three vital elements to work together. The concept was they should work together. Why should they work together? Well, all three of them basically are ways the United States approaches, interacts, and works with others around the world. And all three work in ways that do affect our security, our national security, our securities as people. And so, to the extent that we see them as having that common purpose, and security includes not only military security, it includes the security of economic relations, of diplomatic relations, it includes building longer term friendships and understandings. They are three elements that it would seem almost naturally should be working together. And in the past, very often haven't worked together. Now, why haven't they worked together, or what are the problems of them working together? The most important thing is to realize at the beginning that we are dealing with three different beasts in the sense that they have different purposes and they have different practices, even if they have a shared common goal. When we talk about defense, we are actually talking about defending or offense, projecting power. We are talking about situations where we believe we have to use power to protect our interests that are so important that they supersede the interests of any other party who we are fighting or who we are defending against, and therefore have to be strong enough to resist. But it's built upon the focused use of power. And the structure is a command structure where you have a hierarchy and orders are given and missions are defined, and they are supposed to be carried out as given. Diplomacy is about the process of engagement. It's about negotiation, it's about compromise, it's about exchanges and understanding, it's about bartering. It is not a command control system as the military. It's more an authority agency control. The authority is clearly begins with the president and the ambassador, but the diplomatic corps are the representatives and the agents. They actually exercise a great deal of discretion, and it goes in both directions in the sense that very often in the best of diplomacy, diplomats from different countries will work together to then try to actually influence their authorities to change their processes. And it's about maintaining balance and actually preventing war and advancing interests and trading them off in a way that you have a sustainable relationship. Development is actually about capacity building, capacity sharing, capacity enhancing, so that you can establish long-term relationships. And development actually stresses building the capacities of others so that you can then interact in a relationship of cooperation. And that's what development is about. It's not about command and control. It's not about authority and agency. It's really about cooperation and mutual sharing and partnership. Three very different purposes, three very different ways of going about achieving the purposes, even though they overlap in terms of all being things that are necessary for the benefit of our country, our people, and others who we care about. Now, in saying that, they have different capacities to work differently in terms of where they have high, low, or what you might call medium capacities to affect situation. We're talking about building long-term relationships outside particular interests. Development has a very high capacity to do that, to build relationships between people. Diplomacy has a medium ability to do that. The military have a very low ability to do that. They are mission oriented, and when missions ends, what you very often see is relations ends. We were allies with the Soviet Union till Hitler was defeated. We were enemies virtually the day after. In terms of just building cooperation with foreign governments, the military has a high capacity, diplomacy has a high capacity, but so does development. And there, the differences may be more temporal. The military, who can build a short-term one, who can build a medium-term one, and who's best for building a long-term one. And then the situation changes if we're talking about people, not necessarily countries. So if you're talking about building cooperative relations with people, actually the military has a very low capacity to do that in the nature of its being a projection of force. Diplomacy has a sort of a medium. Development has a very high capacity to build cooperative relations with people because that's the way it works. The same about transforming societies themselves. Military have a very low capacity to transform a society. They can destroy the society. They have almost no capacity to transform it. Diplomacy has a facilitatory capacity, but because it represents the immediate authorities, it doesn't have a high potential for transforming societies. Development has a very, very high potential to help transform societies. Then we get down to that very specific area of conflicts. How do each of these three deal with conflicts? And this is where we get problems where we forget that there are three separate legs of the triad and we think they're one leg of the triad. Actually, military defense deals with conflicts by terminating them. Hopefully, you try to win them, and victory is your goal. Diplomacy actually tries to manage. Diplomacy is almost a perpetual state of affairs. You're always trying to manage relationships. Development actually tries to deal with conflict by transforming it, by changing the very underlying circumstances that gave rise to the conflict or have fed the conflict, and by replacing them with situations that hopefully will replace those factors and actually put in positive factors that create new cooperative, peaceful relationships between former adversaries. The problem that we face today, one of them sees the other as an asset. It begins to expect the other to act in the same way it does. So, when military people see development as an asset, they expect the development activity to go in a very strong and immediate way to express its presence, the way a military force focuses its power on the center of its interest. In fact, that's not the way development works. Development works long-term, slow-moving, slow establishment of trust through common effort. Diplomacy, when diplomacy grabs development, it expects the development to be focused in the ways that are most prominent and most clearly attached to whatever is the immediate diplomatic interest. If we want to support a group of people and reward them, you want to reward them with whatever you're giving them. It doesn't see development as actually very often working behind the scenes to create an alternative situation that might later allow you to work differently with different parties. So the secret is we have to get back to that very legitimate concept of having three legs of a triad, defense, diplomacy, and development, but realize that they have to work together, but neither one is an asset of the other. They work in very different purpose ways. They have different immediate purposes, and their time frames are very different. And we need all three to contribute what they are best at, and we have to resist uh, the inclination of people to want to use any of the other as an asset for their mission rather than they're working in partnership for facilitating each other's mission and the larger common good.